Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another installment of Out in the Woods. It's me, your friendly neighborhood host, Jacob, and today, I have another Raging Cajun guest, but this time, you're gonna hear he's actually pretty Cajun, IRL. Welcome Brandon Henderson, Out in the Woods. How are you, Brandon?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm pretty good. Welcome to Mississippi. I know you have family up here, but this is probably your first time, in Hattiesburg?
Probably my second or third time in Hattiesburg.
Okay, yeah. Out in the Woods listeners, we are in Out in the Woods Hattiesburg branch today. Zoom would not work out in his neck of the woods, so
too far down the bayou.
It's swept up with all the crawdads. So Brandon, introduce yourself. Where are you from, and what do you do?
I'm Brandon Henderson. I'm from Louisiana. I live on Bayou Grove State in Ponkapee Parish. I live pretty close to New Roads, Louisiana, if you've ever heard of it. Not too far off of False River. Right now, I am in between jobs, but I've got a lot of experience in just about everything.
Jack of all trades.
Right.
Master, you know what, of probably most of them. You also told me earlier that you are also close to Baton Rouge, so I feel like people would probably, it's the capital of Louisiana, so they would probably know where that is too.
Right.
So Brandon, where do you fall on the LGBT plus spectrum?
I am gay, but as my cousin likes to say, I'm not gay. But
very, very country, I was going to say, not gay, we've all heard that, But audiences, I'm sure all of you know, being gay is not a monolith. We're people just like everybody else,
Anybody can be gay. An average person can be gay. It doesn't matter.
All it takes is a couple of drinks and a little lube. No.
So true.
So, Brandon, when did you know that you were different?
I want to say when I was about 5 years old. The household I grew up in, we did not have cable television, satellite television. I still don't have either one.
Really?
Yeah. I still have antenna television. So I was a cord cutter before there were cord cutters.
Do you have streaming? Do you
Yes, I do. Over the years, I've gone to streaming, and it's a lot simpler.
I was gonna say, get yourself some HBO, honey.
Yeah.
Now that you don't even have to have cable anymore. Those rabbit ears, they've got to get old,
Right. But anyways, I want to say we were watching either Maury or Jerry Springer. I don't see Jerry Springer coming up because of the time and because we didn't have cable television. But it was something along those lines, and there was a gay couple on there, and I told my mama that I wanted to marry a man at 5 years old. And that went over like a fart in church.
Oh my God. What a revelation so young. Did you even know what you were even implying at that point?
No, I did not. I didn't even know what being gay was. I just knew that I wanted to marry a man. And my mom didn't take it very well.
I feel like it would have been a little different if you were in the context of something else, but when you're watching trash TV like Maury or Jerry Springer, it's like, I don't know if that's exactly the role model you want when your sexuality starts burgeoning, I don't know. That's a lot different than, normally people are like, I watched, Aladdin and I just went, but no, you're going all in. You're like, Jerry Springer, I was 5 years old smoking a cigarette. So what was your first exposure to queerness and queer culture? So I'm assuming that the answer is pretty much the same. Yeah.
But I will say that, by the time I got to high school, I lived a very sheltered life.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in church. We went to church every Sunday and Wednesday, good Baptists,
Uh-huh.
And when I got to high school, my best friend, one day, I want to say probably about in 8th grade, she turns to me and she says, you're gay, right? And at that point, I really did not know what gay was. So right then and there, I totally rejected it. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought about it for probably a week or so, and I go back to her one day. I'm like, you know what? I think I am gay. I was like, that feels so weird to say. It's like when you finally come to terms with it and realize what you are, it's so different.
So you just kind of, so it really so the rejection was very short-lived, you know.
Right,
a lot of people, like me, you know, I had similar experiences in my formative years, and people were like, I think you're totally gay. And I'm just like, no, I'm not. And that was kind of how it was for years after that. Even though my Google search history would probably tell you the truth.
But never bought it.
I was going to say.
If we could see search histories, that would expose a lot of things.
It
not
would.
Just being gay
or let me tell you.
Another thing I wanted to say is that my cousin Cindy that lives here in Mississippi, she lives about an hour north of here. Well, she likes to say that she's always known I'm gay. I've always been different. I've always wanted to hang out with the older women in the kitchen rather than playing outside with the boys in the yard, you know. But that's not to say that I was feminine. I did a lot of, you know, manly things growing up and everything. But I always wanted to be on the gossip. You know what I mean?
Yeah, same. Although, you know, I mean, to kind of prove your point, you know, you literally were. I was like, "What are you up to yesterday?" Like, and you were like, "I was chopping wood," and I was like, "Oh my god." So yeah, he's butch. We'll say he's very butch. So you know. We can all hear your dialect now. Once again, you know, you wanted to be with the women in the kitchen, but like you're not once again, you're not traditionally feminine.
Right.
So on a scale of Jeffree Star to Joe Exotic, how country are you?
I'm definitely not Joe Exotic. I wish I could pull out the men that he does.
Do you though? Like,
no.
I was gonna say, do any of us really?
I'm sure some of that's kind of made up too, you know.
Yeah. Well, they can be bought with meth. So
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you could buy any crackhead with a little bump of meth.
I was gonna say, I mean,
they'll do anything.
That's universal. I was gonna say anything.
I would say that's such a hard spectrum to you know put yourself on because they're both crazy. I'm crazy, but I'm not Jeffree Star crazy. I'm not Joe Exotic crazy. I'm me.
Okay.
And I like being me. I like being a gay Cajun, you know. There's not very many of us. I do know a few, you know, but...
You've dated most of them.
Yeah, exactly.
When you find that good old gay Cajun, you gotta hold on.
Lord.
You gotta hold on for dear life. Also, like, I just want to shout out to Will, everybody, because when I was formulating that question, I had to ask, I was like, let me get your input. Who is the least country person that you can think of? And we went through a couple before we settled on Jeffree Star. I'm pretty sure Jeffree Star is probably the least country person I can think of, at least in the
That was the
community.
last person I was expecting to pop up in the interview questions.
Well, for you specifically, yeah, absolutely. Moving on, how was growing up queer in the South, and how did that shape you?
Where do you want to start?
From the very beginning. From that week after that your friend was like, you're gay, and you were like, you know what, I am, and just...
we can't start. We got to go back a little week.
Oh, Lord, okay, take me back. Take us all back.
My mom and my dad... My mom was 9 years younger than my dad. My mom was 17 whenever she had me. My mom and my dad were together. They actually got married in what is now my front yard. You know, a good old classic shotgun wedding. My mom was pregnant with me whenever she got married to my dad.
Visibly?
Yes. She was 2 months away.
Oh my God!
Well, actually 1 month, because I think they got married either in June or August, and I was born in September.
Oh my God.
My mom was a kid raising a kid, basically. And my mom had a very rough childhood herself. My dad did too. But we was poor, you know, and anything to make $1, my dad was on it, you know. My papa worked all kind of side jobs. I had a lot of role models, you know. They might not have been the best role models, but my grandmother, that would be my mom's mom. She took care of us every day after school, but she was schizophrenic, so I have the whole mentally disabled aspect in my life too. Not myself personally, but I've had to grow up with it almost.
Which is a roller coaster in and of itself, because schizophrenia is no joke. You know.
But she's still with us right now, and what was the question?
So the question was actually how has growing up queer in the South shaped you? So I see everything forming.
Right.
Where does like the layer of queerness kind of fall in there?
Like I said, I didn't know what gay was until I was 16. No, probably 14. Whenever my friend decided to tell me. Right. But when I finally realized it did change a lot of things. I didn't know who I was, but I'm glad, you know, I eventually found myself.
Was it kind of a struggle finding how to incorporate that into your family's routine?
Yes. We'll go into my coming out story, because I think that'll probably have a lot to do with this. But I'm gonna warn you now, I'll probably end up crying in the middle of it.
It's okay. we're emotionally open and vulnerable here at Out in the Woods. Okay, no judgment here. This is a safe space.
So, my dad, his name is J-Boy, or was J-Boy. My dad passed away in 2012. In 2006, I think is whenever my parents found out I was gay. I was at school, and my brother had stayed home from school that day and ended up showing my mom my MySpace. Yeah, we're going back to MySpace.
Welcome to 2006, everybody. Welcome to 2006. We're setting the stage. There is a MySpace profile involved in someone's coming out story.
Oh,
so
it's like One Tree Hill or something.
I don't want to wait for my life to be over.
Well, if you remember they had the headlines. We would put stupid little icons and stuff like that in your headline.
Yeah.
What you're younger, I don't know if you had any
I never had a
experience
MySpace. My friends had MySpaces, but my mom would never let me get one. It was not until I was in 8th grade that we made a Facebook account. So I never had MySpace. I never had MySpace.
I was driving. 2006, I would have been 16. I had just started driving. Well, in my headline, I had an icon that said "Nothing runs like a queer," coming from, you know, the same famous slogan of John Deere, "Nothing runs like a deer." I had "Nothing runs like a queer."
How simultaneously fabulous and so deliciously country of you. But anyway, please continue. Please continue.
So, and my MySpace, you know, my parents never seen my MySpace, so I had all kind of stuff on there. So there's no telling what she did see. Anyways, I come home from school, and I go to walk in the door. As soon as I open the door in the house, my mom's standing there with the hands on her hip, and she says, "So nothing runs like a queer, huh?" And I'm like, oh shit. Was not expecting this today.
Oh god. She wasn't even sly about it. She literally was just like, yeah, I know.
And one of my biggest worries is I'm trying not to slander my mom in any kind of ways, because she did not know how to. My mom had very limited parenting experience, being that her mother was schizophrenic, and you know, she's basically a child raising a child this whole time. So my biggest worry is trying not to say anything bad about my mom, but I mean, it has to be brought up, it has to be talked about. But she did not take it very well, and We got into a really big argument. You know, there was Bible thumped and everything else. So later, I ended up calling some friends of mine to come pick me up, and I kind of ran away, you know, but my mom ended up finding out where I was. And I'm so glad, you know, I had friends supporting me through all of that, you know, during that time. But even the people that you least expect to help you, they always end up helping you in the end. You know, there was this straight guy and who would later become my stepsister. They were the ones who come got me. I would have thought that this particular person would have come pick me up, but you know, I'm so glad that he made the effort and he sat there and talked to me about it and everything. And it was just like, you know, I still have high regards for him today for helping me through that. Anyways, my mom ended up finding out where I was at, and she came and picked me up, brought me back home, and on the way back home, she said, just wait till your dad finds out. My dad was still at work at this point. Not to mention, in the meantime, during all of this, she made me call my grandfather at work, who's, you know, working at the mechanic shop, and he has to go talk on the shop phone in front of everybody, and made me tell him that I was gay over the phone in front of everybody. Yeah. And this would later be the place where I work too. So I mean, it made things kind of easier. It made the transition.
I was gonna say, yeah, a little bit easier. Yeah, they knew what to expect.
Right. But so my dad had a big jacked up truck with loud pipes, you know. And when he turned off of the highway, you know, 3 miles away, you could hear him coming down the highway. So I'm sitting on the porch at that point, and I'm just waiting to hear my daddy's truck coming, because I knew it was going to be all hell was fixing to break loose. You know, I'm just expecting he's going to beat the fuck out of me. Well, I hear his truck coming, and I just panic. I don't know what I'm thinking. I just take off running. And where I live right on the bayou bank, right on the edge of the bayou. You know, I have probably 2 football fields length of bayou on my property. Well, I took off running down the bayou bank, and I went and found the biggest tree I could get behind. And this is kind of one of the ways I met Jacob, because I said, hey, your podcast is called Out in the Woods. Well, hey, I really did come out in the woods. Well, my dad gets home, and him and my mom are arguing. I can kind of hear things going on while they're arguing outside. You know, and I'm just sitting there panicking. My heart's about to beat out my chest. And, you know, I'm crying. I'm an emotional wreck, because I don't know what to expect. Well, I give it about 15 minutes, and eventually I hear somebody walking through the leaves, and I know it's probably my dad. I look out from behind the tree. I'm down the bank, you know, and he's way up here, walking along the edge of the bank. And he said, Brandon, where are you? Brandon, where you at? So I poke out from behind the tree, and I'm watching, and I see he's carrying some stuff, and I'm like, what the hell he's about to whip my ass with? And he gets closer, and I see it's 2 fishing poles and a tackle box, and I'm like, you know, kind of looking at them.
He's like, gonna bash me over the head with a tackle box, and then just use both fishing poles to whip me. Yeah.
And finally I can't take it no more, because I'm crying and I'm trying to hold my breath. And I say, I'm right here, Daddy. So he comes down and he finds me, and he doesn't say anything. Well, he goes and sits on the edge of the bank by the water, and I go sit right there next to him, and I'm crying. I'm a mess. And he baits my fishing hook for me. He casts the line for me, and just hands me the pole. Then he does the same thing for his. And we sitting there probably about a good 10 minutes. I'm trying to get myself together. He just looks at me and he says, do you mind telling me what the hell is going on around here today?
I do mind, but since you ask, you know.
I just looked at him. I said, Daddy, I'm gay. And he said, I don't see what the big deal is. I've been knowing, your mama's been knowing, the family's been knowing, everybody's been knowing all this time. I don't know why it's such a big deal. And I'm like, you mean I done went through all of this shit for nothing today? And I mean, we sat there and fished until it got dark, for sure. And my dad told me some very important things that day. He said that I love you. I'm sure your mama still loves you, even though she's being a bitch right now. Your mama loves you. You know, everybody loves you. And most importantly, God loves you. And I still remember that today.
And you still feel that today, you know?
Yeah.
So, Brandon, on that note, let's take a break.
All right.
A couple of weeks ago, an old colleague of mine, Wesley Williamson, passed away at the age of 27 from a congenital heart disorder. He was an LGBT theater artist and a light to all who knew him, and unfortunately, I never got to have him on to tell his story. But in his memory, there is still an opportunity for positive change. You can make a donation to the Adult Congenital Heart Association at www.achaheart.org, or help future theater makers make their dreams come true by donating to the Northwest Mississippi Community Foundation Wesley Waldrop Williamson Theater Scholarship at 4975 Highway 51 North, Senatobia, Mississippi 38668. Even donating to a local community theater of your choice will be an honor to Wesley and his legacy. Just always remember to hold your friends close, take nothing for granted, and always strive to put good in the world. Just like Wesley. Hello, everybody. The following is a small list of places you can donate for Black lives and the lives of all people of color all across the United States. National Bailout, the Bail Project, Mutual Aid, the Navajo Water Project, My Block, My Hood, My City, Resist, Black Table Arts, Embrace Race, Social Justice Learning Institute, Black Feminist Project, Integrate NYC, Black Girls Code, Pretty Brown Girl, The Winter Institute, Ramp Your Voice with Valissa, Autistic People of Color Fund, Sins Invalid, ACLU, Black Lives Matter Global Network, Color of Change Education Fund, Anti-Racism Fund, the Refugee Dream Center, Alliance to Mobilize Our Resistance, Black Voters Matter Fund, the Collective Political Action Committee, the National Police Accountability Project, Campaign Zero, Communities United for Police Reform, Equal Justice Initiative, No New Jails NYC, Anti-Recidivism Coalition, Legal Rights Center, Transgender Law Center Black LGBTQIA+ Migrant Project, Up Against the Law Legal Collective, Black Trans Advocacy Coalition, The Okra Project, Brave Space Alliance, Trans Justice Funding Project, the Loveland Foundation, Black Women for Wellness, National Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network, National Black Disability Coalition, Sister Song, Navajo and Obi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund, Orinda Tribe COVID Response, and Dinahosoto Families COVID-19 Relief Fund. There are many, many more, and they all need our help. So donate, volunteer, and do what you can for the future of people of color in this country. If the system won't, we will, because none of us are free until all of us are free. And we're back with Brandon Henderson. We just had a little insight into his family life, which that's kind of the focal point of this whole episode is, you know, is family. I know that I've talked at length about my family in previous episodes and stuff like that. And of course, as we've discussed before, you know, chosen family a lot of the time turns out to be more helpful and conducive to queer people, you know, because unfortunately a lot of the time there is a level of rejection from our biological family. But once again, from talking to you, that has kind of not been the case. So I guess my next question for you is, what does family mean to you?
Family, to me, means it's not about your blood. And I think this kind of answers your other question too. Is blood thicker than water? Absolutely not. Family is who you surround yourself with. And being gay, I know a lot of times we have to pick and choose our family. And, you know, it's just a blatant point that some family is going to accept you and some aren't. Some just need a little time. Such as me and my mom, we didn't talk for quite a few years. When I was 17, she threw me out the house. I emancipated myself. And, you know, I started living on my own with the help of my grandparents. But, you know, without the help of some very key people in my life through that time, I don't know how I would have made it here. You know, and those people I consider my family. I mean, life's not about the getting to the end. It's about the journey, you know, or however that saying goes.
Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, we'll go with that. You were close, I'm pretty sure. I can't remember the exact quote either, but yeah.
But, you know, without these, like, key role models in my life, I just don't know where I would be right now. And there, you know, I have my mom, but you know what? I have my second mom that, thank God, she was there for me whenever, you know, all of this happened, because she helped me stay on the right path in life. You know, I could have very easily been one of those meth heads, you know, on side the road or something that way. But I guess God has other plans. So I'm still here, and you know that's something I keep reminding myself, is that, you know, I've made it this far, and I've been through a lot of stuff, and you know, I'm still here. So evidently, I'm still here to serve a purpose for something.
Yeah. Well, and you know, right. Like, my next question was going to be, you know, is blood thicker than water? And the answer to that, I agree with you, is no. It's not, because, you know, sometimes your family can hurt you worse than any stranger ever could.
They know, like, your pressure points on how to hurt you, you know? And they can do you very, very dirty.
So I guess on a lighter note, though, let's talk about your family legacy and where do you think you fit into it? And you know, and y'all, one of the first conversations we had whenever we got here, you've been doing a lot of Ancestry.com genealogical research. But you know, you not necessarily going all the way back, but you know, you had told me a bit about, you know, your grandfather, and then your father, and it's kind of, you know, there's kind of been a family business of sorts going on.
I wouldn't say it's a family business. My mom's dad worked for John Deere for 50 years as a technician, and you know, I've worked right alongside of him since I could pick up a wrench. That's my saying, I like to say. But I worked for John Deere for 10 and a half years myself. I just recently quit. You know, I'm looking to seek other opportunities in life right now. But as far as my family legacy goes, I consider that I'm doing fairly well compared to the family history.
Yeah.
Let's see. On my dad's side, my grandparents, my Popo LJ and my Mama Rusty. Rusty was born in Laurel, right close to here. Laurel, Mississippi. Moved to Mobile, Alabama at a very young age and was raised in Mobile. They lived on what is now Blakely Island, I think it is. Anyways, it's the island where the USS Alabama, I think, is docked. Back then it was Navy port or Marine port or something that way, and they basically lived in the slums. They lived within the whorehouses and everything else there. You know, all the amenities for the sailors coming back.
Well, it was the Depression at that point, wasn't it? Right. Yeah. So, like, I mean, you kind of had what you were given at that point. Yeah.
Right. So they grew up with no shoes, you know, dirt roads, everything else. She eventually started working at a club owned by the mafia and started dating the owner, who was part of the mafia. She ended up trying to get out of that situation because he was hitting on her and everything else that comes associated with the mob, I assume. And her brother was a Marine and helped her get out of Mobile. It would make a pretty interesting story if I ever sat down and wrote it all the way out. But anyways, she ended up running away from the mafia with the help of her brother, my great uncle, and ended up coming to Louisiana. He told her, don't stop till you don't see him no more. And she ended up in Baton Rouge and met my grandfather. My grandfather, LJ, he decided to hide her out in the Atchafalaya Basin, which is very large swamp, and it's full of camps and everything else.
Easy to hide.
Yeah. Nobody's going to find you.
I was going to say, easy to hide a live body or a dead body.
Especially without a boat.
Right.
Well, when things blew over, I think they kind of went their separate ways, because I didn't know until after my dad passed away that my dad has one half brother and one half sister, one from my mama and one from my papa. And so something happened in that time where my mama got pregnant, not by my grandfather, and she ended up giving the kid away. My grandfather ended up getting somebody pregnant, and he either knew about it or didn't know about it, but did not claim the child. But I guess they were still trying to figure their life out, and they was some badasses and couldn't have a kid in the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if a kid would want to be raised in that anyway.
No, not at all.
So it was probably a decision for the best. But eventually they would get back together, and they got married and had my dad and everything. And that's just half of the story. I mean, I want to say I'm doing much better than that.
Well, yeah, but to a degree, it's different, but you understand the feeling of running away from societal problems,
right?
Being, once again, being queer in the South,
right?
You kind of inherited your own troubles,
right?
They had their troubles, and now you kind of have your own. So in a way, I guess you can kind of relate to that, which probably made it. I mean, especially for your grandmother growing up in the slums, she probably knew plenty of gay people, of queer people.
That was one thing I loved about my mama, is that she never judged me, not 1 minute, and I was pretty much the only one out of the three of us that was really close to her. She had me driving her around at 11 years old, running to the store and getting her cigarettes. I'm buying cigarettes at 11 years old. And I was her little bitch, but hey, I got to drive a car.
But that's probably, she called you her little bitch, I'm sure.
Actually, my nickname was Scooter. That's what she is, the only one, and her side of the family are the only ones that call me that. And if anybody calls me that to this day, I know it's somebody from that side of the family. But Scooter came from a book that she had bought me when I was little called Scooter the Squirrel. And she would read that to me whenever I was there at the night at her house. So.
Oh my God. So I guess are you trying to pull the legacy forward, or are you just trying to kind of exist within the framework of your family?
I'm trying to make my own legacy, I guess. The other half of the family was sharecroppers, and and that's also where the mental disease in my family comes from. They had it pretty rough too, just with that. My mom, the way that whole story starts out, my papa and my granny, both families were sharecroppers. They ended up meeting each other in the backwoods of Mississippi, at a dance or something that way. You know, back then they would just all get together in a barn, you know, people in the community, and the boys would ride around cars to cars, going to different ones, you know, seeing what kind of girls they could pick up. Well, that's how my papa and my granny met. Well, they got together and they got married, and my papa made sure that my granny graduated high school. They was married during her last year of high school, and he made sure that she graduated. So later on, my papa and my granny would have my mom in like their mid-30s, I think, which you can kind of relate to that because I think you're in the same situation.
Yes.
They had a store in Macon, Mississippi. Have you ever heard of Macon?
I have not.
That's in Noxubee County.
I know of Noxubee County. But
You know what Noxubee means, right?
No.
It means to stink.
No!
It's an Indian word, yeah.
Did you also know that Picayune, sorry everyone from Picayune is actually, isn't it like a French word for garbage heap or
think
something?
so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Sorry everyone in Picayune, Mississippi, but just so y'all
maybe
know.
maybe someone can relate to it, you know.
Right.
Anyways, they would have a store that was kind of like a gas station and a thrift store put together.
Okay.
My mom was about 3 years old at this time. Supposedly, a man come in and raped my grandmother. My mom, being that young, she hid under the table and seen the whole thing. After that point is whenever my grandmother lost her mind. That was the beginning of her schizophrenia. Now, who says it wasn't always there? You know, but it brought it out.
Right.
So my mom never really knew her mom not being mentally disabled. You know. And it was very rough because mental health in the 70s in Mississippi, you know?
Yeah. Last place you want to be.
Right.
Last place you want to be with a mental illness. Yeah, no.
Nobody knew how to deal with nothing like that back
Right.
then. So my granny went through the ringer. When she would have a bad spell, they would ship her off to Jackson. That's all I know. I think it's Jackson, Louisiana. I think they have a mental institution. So I think she probably went 3 to 5 times during my mom's childhood, and my mom doesn't like to talk about it very much. My mom doesn't really have very much memory of it, because I assume she's tried to block out a lot of things.
Yeah.
But when my granny is on her medicine, everything's good. She is the sweetest person in the entire world. Not a bad bone on her body, but just don't let her get off the medicine.
So I guess all of that to say, you know, once again, like, things in the past still have a ripple effect on us.
That's right.
On us today. And so once again, growing up already with the pressure of being queer, and then you also have all of that history, that dark history, you know, also on your back, and your family's having to deal with that, and you don't want to, you know, it's a complicated equation because you don't want to put any more on them than they already have, you know.
Going back to the family legacy, I don't really have a legacy to come from. Not saying that their story isn't important, but you know, I just want to make my own legacy. You know what I mean?
You want a fresh slate.
I know my history. I'm not trying to rewrite history. You know, I hold my grandfather and my previous profession very dearly to my heart, but that was part of the reason why I had to get out of it too. Especially during the pandemic and everything. Everything was very hard. I pretty much worked in the place that I grew up in, and we got bought out a few years ago. And the new company was not so great, and you know, I have to watch this building that I spent my life in be torn apart and this and that. It was very hard on me, especially, you know, your childhood memories being ripped up.
One thing that we didn't actually get into, you know, your dad was actually a little famous, locally famous. You know, he was an artist.
He was. He did swamp art. That's what they call it. I wrote a letter to the news one day when I was 15, I think, And they had a segment on our local news called Too Much Travels, and he would go around interviewing different people throughout Louisiana. And so I wrote him a letter, email actually. That's whenever, email you first started emailing people.
Right. At least in Louisiana.
Right.
Yeah. They had just caught up, yeah.
And sent him a bunch of pictures of my dad's artwork and everything, and he actually came out and interviewed us. And after that, the newspaper came, and he made the news, and he was so proud of that. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry I get choked up, but my dad passed in 2012. It wasn't very good. My mom actually ended up throwing him out in 2006, and he kind of went off the deep end. My dad was already a struggling alcoholic. He had quit when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and he did really good with quitting that. But my dad was into everything. He smoked weed, he did this, he did that. Mm-hmm. But the alcohol was pretty much the worst thing. I can remember being very little and him just like coming in just this rage, and my mom hovering over me and trying to protect me from things he's throwing. I remember him throwing stuff straight out the window, busting the window and everything. It wasn't pretty. I was very glad that my dad quit drinking. When my mom threw him out in 2006, he took it very hard because, he worshipped us and he worshipped my mom. And, they had their reasons of splitting up and this and that. But he decided to go back to his old ways, and he started drinking and go in and out of jail on drug charges and everything else. He sobered back up in 2010. When he sobered back up, he had found him a new girlfriend. Mm-hmm. They was together. Everything was good. I had my ex I was living with. He would invite us over for supper. My dad was very caring when he wasn't drunk. Mm-hmm. He was a very good person. But when he was drunk, it flew off the chain. Later on, he ended up drinking again. I can't go into too many details about why. Mm-hmm. But when he started drinking, he couldn't stop, and he ended up pulling a knife out on his girlfriend. And thank God her twin sister was there with them, because it was during Christmas. Mm-hmm. And ended up pulling a knife out of my daddy's hand, and they threw him out the house. Well, he was living in this rundown trailer that was leaking. The roof was leaking. They had no running water, no electricity. He was just existing there, and it was pretty sad. But my thing was, I would not talk to my dad if he was drunk. My dad would call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, drunk phone calls, drunk voicemails, everything else. And I'm trying to work a job and have a life, Mm-hmm. One day I'm at work and I get a call. It's my grandfather calling to say that they found my dad dead. My co-worker that sat next to me, he actually took the call, and he pulled me to the back into the warehouse and told me. Sorry.
It's okay.
I went to where he was living. It was about 30 minutes away. I actually broke down crying like 3 times trying to drive, and I finally pulled over to my friend's house that was along the way, and I'm like, call Tanya. Tanya is my friend that's like a second mom to me. Call Tanya and let her know what's going on so she can bring me. Mm-hmm. I didn't know, but the chief of police in the town that my dad died in was Tanya's brother, half brother, I think. So that made things a lot easier. But anyways, she took me there, and they would not let me see the body because he had been dead for 3 days. He basically drank himself to death, and it was very, very saddening just to see it, because we had to pack up 6 construction bags full of beer cans just to get the body out the house.
Fuck.
Yeah. Alcoholism is real. They wouldn't let me see him at all because he had started turning black in the face. The way he died, he was sitting on the toilet for who knows what reason, and he fell off to the side, so all the blood went to his head. So his face and his head was black. That's why they wouldn't let me see him. And it's very, I regret not making them let me see him just for the closure, you know? But at the same time, I'm glad I didn't get to see him.
Yeah. That would fuck me up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to.
And I was 21 at the time.
Yeah.
And I had to I'm sorry.
You're good.
I had to figure out how to bury somebody, not necessarily bury them because I haven't cremated. But I had to figure out how to
arrange of
handle a death at 21 by myself,
Yeah.
might add. At the time, my brother was in jail. My sister was not of age. My mom actually ended up calling me and saying, "This is not your responsibility to bury your dad." I'm like, well, whose responsibility is it? I know you're not going to do it.
Right. Which I guess it further reinforces the idea that, you know, you could be much worse off because many people go through the same kind, you know, are surrounded by, you know, addiction, death from addiction, you know, and you could I mean, you're probably genetically susceptible to it if we're being honest, you know, and you really could have fallen into it.
And just like I keep telling Jacob, I don't drink. I do drink very occasionally, but I try not to drink if I don't have to, and that's part of the reason because I don't want to fall down that rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about legacy. Well, I mean, what legacy do I have to pull from that?
Yeah.
So, anyways, I miss my dad very much. I actually had a sign. He likes to leave me little signs, and he's done this since he's died. But anyways, I got very emotional on the way over here because I passed a house with some political signs in front of it. One of them, I could see Henderson from the distance, and as I'm getting close to it, I start making it out. Well, it was this guy running for a council member, but the name on the sign was my dad's exact name down to the junior, you know, and my dad's name is very unique. It's not often you see something like that. Mm-hmm. So I know it was a sign from him. Mm-hmm. So I knew it was on the right path coming here today to talk about.
Right. And just to reiterate, like, you know, you have to make sure you're on the right path because you were specifically taking back roads here.
Right.
You were not, you specifically chose the Google Maps route that would take you on the back roads.
Right. I love the back roads of Mississippi. That's like one of my favorite things to do is just ride and look at all the stuff, you know. I hate taking the interstate and I hate flying. I'd rather drive the back road somewhere, you know. Mm-hmm.
So Brandon, you kind of answered my next question, which was, you know, about, you know, if you ever felt like there was, you know, a time when there was a disconnect with your family.
Right.
You know, actually we've made great time. We can go to the last question, which is, you know, it's the same every episode. So if you could go back in time and impart any words of comfort or wisdom on your childhood self, what would they be?
Everything's going to be all right. You know, I faced a lot of adversity. I faced a lot of challenges. But you know what? I'm still here. I made it through everything. It kind of sucks that... It's kind of bad that me and my mom are back on talking terms because she used to be the one that said, "You're never going to do this, you're never going to do that." I made it a point to prove her wrong every time. Well, now that we're back on good terms, you know, I don't have somebody saying, "You can't do that and you can't do this," you know. Mm-hmm. So I kind of need that motivation again. But
So you would go back and you'd be like, listen to your mom, just so that she's gonna be really mean, but don't worry, it's gonna make it better.
Yeah, very much so.
So, Brandon, before we go, are there any philanthropic promos, shout outs, anything that my listeners need to know about?
There's another podcast that I listen to pretty religiously. It's called Straight Talk with Ross. If you ever need to laugh, give it a listen. And, you know, there's always days where we need to laugh. That's my go-to laugh. And I'm very good friends with one of the co-hosts on there, Mr. Malone. And it's always a good listen for that. And not to mention Jacob's podcast. I mean, I love listening to all the different people from the South that he interviews. It really makes my day.
Well, here's that $20, I promise.
Oh, thank you.
Brandon, thank you so much for traveling to be here. It's been really great talking to you. I know my listeners are going to love hearing your story and your family story. So please, we can't wait to have you back again someday, okay?
Oh, I can't wait to come back.
Thank y'all so much from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to yet another installment of Out in the Woods. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share so that these Southern queer perspectives, voices, and stories can continue to be told all across the world. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at ONTW_podcast, TikTok at JakeyPoo777, or Facebook at Out in the Woods. If you have a listener question, want to be on my show, or just want to chat, send me an email, ontwpodcast@gmail.com, or you can just slide in my DMs on any of the socials that I listed before. Thank y'all so much for coming out in the woods and into my closet.